the San Antonio Spurs. They finished with the 11th seed. They finished 32 and 39. And for me, two storylines heading into this season. Is Greg Popovich going to retire after this year? And I also feel like for the Spurs, it's time to rebuild. It's time to rebuild. It's time. I think it's time. The only additions they made in the offseason were Keita Bates-Diop. They lost Bryn Forbes, Marco Bellinelli. They drafted Devin Vassell, Trey Jones, who's a great defensive point guard. And Devin Vassell has looked great in the preseason so far. He looks polished. He looks poised. He looks like a veteran out there. And to me, their starting lineup is probably going to be DeJounte Murray, Derek White, DeRozan, Aldridge, and Jakob Poeltl. Like for me, when I look at the Spurs and this duo of DeRozan and Aldridge, I think the Western Conference is exposing DeRozan for kind of what he is. Like DeRozan's a good scorer.
He's a 1990s player.
But he's not just that, but he's a good scorer, but that's all he's giving you. He doesn't really contribute to winning basketball much. And Toronto was they were in the East first, because I think this Spurs roster in the East is a lock for the playoffs. I think it's a lock for the playoffs in the East. But in the West, they're one of the bottom teams in the West. I mean, you look at their bench. Patty Mills is pretty good. Lonnie Walker, still young. Keldon Johnson, I loved him. He kind of bursted onto the scene late last year. Rudy Gay, who's still, a pretty solid player. Trey Lyles, Devin Vassell, and Lucas Samanik. I think this is the year, even though I think it's not in Greg Popovich's blood to rebuild and to just tank, I think this is the year where they should try to trade DeRozan. They should try and trade Aldridge, get some picks back, even Rudy Gay to a contender, to somebody that wants some bench depth. I think it's time to blow this thing up, because them being competitive is just going to hurt their stock in the draft, and I think they need a star player.
I think, you know what's crazy? I think
a young star player.
Shout out to Greg Popovich. I feel like he's the greatest. In my eyes, he's the greatest coach of all time. I know in some people's eyes, he's definitely top 3, top 4. But in my eyes, he's the greatest coach of all time. And he built a dynasty in San Antonio. They were nothing before he got there. And then Tim Duncan burst on the scene. And they just became a perennial WCF championship team nonstop. So shout out to Greg Popovich on what he's created and built. Now, I feel like they started the process in a sense, not re-signing DeMar DeRozan, not re-signing LaMarcus Aldridge, not picking up anybody, just picking up draft picks. I think they kind of already started the process. We're going to slowly see it in the sense of them letting, even if they don't trade him, letting DeMar walk, letting Aldridge walk, because I think DeJounte Murray's a great young talent. Devin Vassell is going to be a great young talent. Trey Jones is a good young talent. Lonnie Walker is good. Kendall Johnson, like you said, bursted onto the scene. They still got that guy from Europe, Lucas Samanik. He's going to be good down the stretch if they develop him right. So they have a lot of young pieces aside from the old guys. And I think Patty Mills' contract is up this year too. Marco Bellinelli, they let him walk. So I think we're going to start to see the rebuild process slowly happen. And I hope Popovich can show us that he's not only a coach that can win with a talented team, but he's a coach that can rebuild it from the bottom up and then turn it back into a championship team, because that'll really solidify him in the all-time coaching ranks. But I do agree. I think they're just stuck right now. I think DeMar DeRozan's game isn't fitted for right now. I feel like I feel like he's a good playmaker for his size, and he can play make, but like he takes nothing but mid-range shots, and analytics is not helping his case at the moment. So I feel like he was more built for the 2000s early. Like his old game isn't just built for right now. And you're not going to win with DeMar DeRozan being the best player in your team. So I feel like they might sneak in the bubble. I doubt it. And if they get a high pick, great. They get a guy coming into the San Antonio way, ready to play San Antonio basketball. And I think that I'm more in tune with them getting a Jalen Suggs or a Jalen Green type guy to play in the backcourt with DeJounte Murray. I think Jalen Suggs and DeJounte Murray would be a great backcourt. I think that should be their mindset going forward. But I don't see them doing much this year, just being competitive.
Yeah, I got to stop letting you guys go before me, because you took pretty much everything I was going to say. Although it might not seem like it on paper, I agree. I think they're starting that rebuild already. You look at the money that they have on the books. Aldridge, DeRozan, Patty Mills, Rudy Gay are all on expiring deals. And then the young talent, I didn't even realize that they had this much young talent, but Derek White, Jakob Pertl, DeJounte Murray, Lonnie Walker, Keldon Johnson, Lucas Simonik, Devin Vassell, Trey Jones, like that's a lot of young guys that they can get in there and develop this year. And I like the fact that they're at least going to start the year with some veteran leadership around them. Coach Popovich at the helm, like you said, one of the greatest coaches of all time. I like the odds that they're going to develop those guys with the base and the structure they have in San Antonio. Be that as it may, they are not a playoff team this year. And I would not be surprised to see them as one of those fire sale teams that at the deadline saying, you're a contending team. DeMar DeRozan can help you. LaMarcus Aldridge can help you in whatever role it may be, just trying to get whatever assets they can get for those guys and really committing to that rebuild. But I don't think it's going to take that long for them to get back to it because they're starting off well with DeJounte Murray and those other guys that I named with a supporting cast. And, it's always tough rebuilding, but I think they're off to a nice start. They could surprise me and sneak into a play-in game. I don't see them as a playoff team in any scenario, but I don't see them as even a play-in team this season.
I think at this point in his career, what would be best for DeMar DeRozan is to go to a contending team or a better team and take on a six-man role. I think if before you go, Riv, I think if DeMar DeRozan...
Question.
What's your question?
You think DeMar going back to Toronto would be a realistic goal right at the moment?
I don't think
lower deal.
I don't think Toronto. I mean, on a lower deal that can happen. I don't think anybody wants to pay DeMar $25 million or more. If they do, I want to know what that team is so I can publicly humiliate them. But for me, I think DeMar DeRozan, if he takes on a six-man role going into the second half of his career where he's going to start declining, he can win some six-man of the year awards. I mean, he can win some. And I think he can, Lou Will was one of the best six-men of all time. DeRozan would be even better than that because he gives you instant scoring off the bench, won't give you much defense, but unlike Lou Will, he has the size to lock in defensively. So I think during the second half of his career, that's what's going to be best for him. LaMarcus Aldridge, I don't know who he is, where he fits now in the NBA. I'm not too sure because he's pretty slow on his feet defensively. He's older. He has a great offensive game, but where does he fit? And I think that's why it's going to be extremely hard for the Spurs to trade either of those guys. That being said, I think this year the Spurs, I'm projecting them to finish with the 14th seed in the West, second to last. They can be as high as 11, but they can also, like I said, they'll be as low as 14. I don't think they won't be worse than OKC, but I think, they can finish, they're going to finish 14th, maybe 13th.
And I agree. I think the most I could see him is in the 12-15 range. I think they're not going to be that competitive. I think just the strength of Popovich alone is going to get him some wins, yeah, but I just see them in the 12-15 range. And like you said, DeMar DeRozan can easily win 6 man a year. I think the 6 man a year is predicated on who could just score the most buckets off the bench. And DeMar DeRozan can easily just come in and give you buckets on a nightly basis. So I think he should go to his contract and he should go to a competitive team, take a low deal, be that guy for them. I only mentioned Toronto because that's one of the places that he could possibly go on and come off the bench and be that scorer. Or he can maybe go to a team like Portland, come off the bench and be that scorer, or even Philly. They need a dominant bench scorer. He could go on that team, be that guy. So I like DeMar DeRozan for the simple fact that he's a humble guy. He's not going to give you too much locker room trouble. He's not going to come in and try to do too much. He knows his game. He knows his role. He takes threes when he's open, but he doesn't really like them. He plays the game the way he wants to play. So I like him for that. But LA. He's starting to shoot the three. Last year you saw it a little bit, but yeah, he's slow. I don't know he's more of a like we said with DeMar, a 6-man bench, like a guy who's gonna come off the bench and give you scoring off the big man spot, rebounding. So I think those two guys should just be ready for the next process in their life. I have, like I said, 12-14 would be my range. I think OKC is gonna be clearly the worst team in the league.
Yeah, I had the Spurs finishing at 12. I could see them maybe sneaking up to 10 if everything goes right and they stay healthy and that young talent develops quicker than I expect. But I have them at 12. I can't see them going any lower than 14, but I don't see them as a playoff team.